Senator Wolk. Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I think my question approaches this from a slightly different angle, but I do want to thank the administration for working with us. This has such great potential to help with the homeless issues we face. But in my district, there are some cities that probably have a low homeless count because they don't want any homeless there, and they have no facilities. Is there anything, and there are other cities that are chugging along, trying desperately to keep up with the people who come there because there are services. Has there been any thought given anywhere to incentives so that the non-participating cities would decide to participate? You know, my fear, quite honestly, is nobody's going to apply for the money, but the heavily impacted who actually need the money because they are trying to serve people for whom there isn't enough space. But part of the reason is if you become homeless in some communities, you don't stay there. Right. Because there's nothing for you. It's an interesting balancing act, you know.
So that's one reason why we do have what we kind of refer to as the over-the-counter with the floor, so that everybody's going to get something, and every county can then do a project. And it could be in those cities. Probably
in the impacted cities. I think we'll probably have to deal with that county by county, but I hope CSAC is thinking about that, because otherwise we continue to have very impacted communities.
Thank you, Senator Hancock. On your point, I'm sure there's no definitive data on this, but I know in San Francisco, which is service-rich relative to many of its neighboring counties, the concern has been from some of my constituents that people are coming to San Francisco specifically, homeless people are moving to San Francisco specifically to access services, and we have some data, and I don't have the specific numbers, but it is a strong plurality of San Francisco's homeless population were living in San Francisco when they became homeless. That is a bit of an anecdotal myth that folks are actually moving in en masse to San Francisco or other service-rich counties. Maybe not so much from the information we
could
have.
Very well be, and one of the things I'm not aware of is whether we actually keep good data on where people lived before they became homeless, and for how long. Because I have some highly impacted cities in which I simply don't think every single person was kicked off the last couch from that community. And because human beings are all heading for someplace where they'll be safe, I've been told by mayors in my county, oh, you're so generous in some cities. In my city, we tell them to move on. And I don't think, for instance, that some of the cities that do nothing never had a person become homeless or mentally ill in the history of that community. I think we need better data, honestly, so that we can evaluate these things.
I would agree with you completely, and I believe that as the Department of Housing and Community Development adopts its guidelines and regulations, working with CSAC and other stakeholders, these are very much the issues that they're going to be addressing.
Yeah,
as they make those guidelines.
We dealt with that in the past. I remember there was some legislation that I think now Congressman Alan Lowenthal had. It never got out of the House because it raised the tough issue of could cities that did not wish to build affordable housing, mostly suburban communities, give their affordable housing allotments to cities that were desperately trying to build affordable housing. and becoming increasingly impacted. And the thought at the time was that, no, you needed to try to get affordable housing everywhere. But, so, you know, it is a balancing act, and I don't know what the answer is, but I do hope it should be explicitly addressed, I think.
Any last comments on some of Senator Hancock's concerns?
Well, I think as we've discussed the different funding sources that are available within this initiative, as my colleague Mr. Howard mentioned, we do have the baseline allocations to counties with the hope that everybody will be engaged in this. And I think it's always a fair policy question when we provide funding, to what degree will that incentivize behavior? And certainly I think one of the key underpinnings of this entire proposal is to incentivize both counties and cities to participate in developing more affordable housing that's permanent with supportive services.
Thank you. So do we need to vote on something today?
Yes,
I'll be happy
thank you.
To move the.
So the motion then would be to move AB 1618, our No Place Like Home trailer bill as amended, to the floor, which we would take up tomorrow. So I'll take that as a motion, but I know we have some public comment, so please feel free to step up to the microphone if you could, right in front of you. If you could, of course, we're eager to hear from you, but also be respectful of the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Farah McDade Ting from the California State Association of Counties. As you can tell, we've been closely involved in working on this language. It is true that this language was released about 2 weeks ago, and we've all haven't had much time to look at it. But what we have done is we have dug in, and what CSAC's main goal has been to ensure equity and access for all counties. We think the amendments this morning before you do ensure that. There's very good questions about data on homelessness. The original incarnation of the bill included the HUD 2015 point-in-time homeless count, which is a very good count and a good effort, but we felt it didn't paint the whole picture. And so allowing HCD in consultation with CSAC and the stakeholder advisory group to develop a robust homeless count. How do we develop this data in California? Those counts will occur county-wide, so not city by city. It's true that this funding does go for counties that apply, but any county that wants to do some project like this, there are parts of the bill that require them, of course, to collaborate with other partners, including, of course, cities, community-based organizations, philanthropic organizations, and others. We think any sort of supportive housing project has to have partners to be successful. Lastly, it does require counties to provide supportive services to the tenants of these units. And what that means is a county can't build or refurbish a house that is 45 miles away from robust mental health services. Counties that apply and want to do these sorts of units need to figure out how to make sure services are accessible to the people in those units. CSAC, with these amendments this morning, stands in support of this measure. It has been a fast-moving process. We appreciate the legislature's attention to this. Of course, working with Senate staff, with HCD, who've been very open to our comments, as well as the Department of Finance. There are still some outstanding issues. Of course, we do want to see the bond financing piece of this. So this is just the policy piece, and we stand in strong support of the policy piece. We think the bond financing piece will be useful to see, and we look forward to seeing that in the future, hopefully the near future. Counties, of course, as the recipients of Prop 63 funding, we also appreciate that this measure preserves the nexus between the intent of the voters in passing Prop 63, that these funds would go towards people with serious mental illness. And No Place Like Home preserves that nexus. It allows counties to leverage funding to build supportive housing units for those with serious mental illness.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you, CSAC, for your involvement and your support.
Good afternoon, Mary Adair with the County Behavioral Health Directors. We're very pleased to join CSAC in support of this measure. Once we saw the trailer bill a couple weeks ago, we were able to confirm significant concerns. We've greatly appreciated the work with the administration and the Senate to address our members' concerns, and we thank you for all that hard work in recent weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty Seelex, California Council of Community Behavioral Health Agencies, and I wish we could say we were in support, but we're not there yet. Last week, we provided a list of issues that were our concern. We are, of course, the mental health service providers that have to partner with the housing community to provide the services that go with the housing. And of course, we were the people that led the campaign with former President Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg to write the act, and it is the Mental Health Services Act. And in terms of the linkage between housing and services, we have two policy issues and two technical issues that we think are really very important to address. So I want to briefly state those. I provided them in a letter last week and more recently to staff. So the two policy issues are as follows. First one is the services. It says a county has to commit for 20 years to be able to provide the housing and the services. What it doesn't say, and what we've asked for, is to say to do so without having to cut existing services. That means you have to add a requirement that the county have adequate reserves and that the competitiveness happens in a year that the county sees healthy Prop 63 revenues in the current year. If you are doing a cycle, we're not there now, but in a few years, if we're in a deep recession, a county would not be able to make that commitment without cutting existing services. So we've asked for a sentence to be added that says it demonstrates it can provide the services 20 years without cutting current services. We think that is one of the cornerstones of Prop 63. That's why the reserve clause is there. All it takes to satisfy this, counties would have to have slightly larger reserves, and that there might be a year where you have to wait a year before you can do a next round of bonds. Very important amendment. We've asked for it several times. It has not been offered in response. The second policy issue is there's a provision that says that only mixed housing where you mix the people with mental illness with the general public. We know that as housing policy, segregated housing has historically had bad consequences. However, recently, a number of mental health service providers have found that for that unique population, particularly those that need intensive services, having facilities just for them works better. It solves three problems that you don't have when they're mixed. One is these people are discriminated against by the general public, and when they have their own place, they feel much more comfortable around only people that they can relate to. Second of all, when they're together, they can offer each other peer support, much harder to do when it's mixed housing. And third is that the providers can develop services that go with the housing more easily when it's now. We're not saying that's a universal thing, but as written right now, it's prohibited to do any of the housing that way. We think some language, either taking that clause out or making it, giving the authority to provide exceptions to that, needs to be done. Those are the two policy issues. The technical issues are as follows.
Mr.
One,
Stokes, if you could.
very briefly.
Very briefly.
Very briefly.
Just submit them to us.
Yes, I've done that before, that you add a definition of chronic homelessness. That's problematic. Outreach and engagement doesn't work that way. Simply homeless and severe mental illness is what counts. And third, finally, your advisory committee doesn't include a family with mental illness or state that the resident has to be someone with severe mental illness. Technical issues, and if you can accommodate those, we can be in support of this measure. Without them, we cannot at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Seelix.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Phyllis Marshall on behalf of Los Angeles County in support of the No Place Like Home proposal, with the caveat that we too are reviewing the most current amendments. We find that the No Place Like Home is complementary to several of the initiatives that the county is pursuing to provide services and housing for over 47,000 individuals that live on the streets in LA County every day. As Senator Bell has indicated, of that percentage, 30% of the homeless in LA County can qualify for Prop 63 funding, and that's about 14,000 individuals, but that leaves another 33,000 individuals living on the streets in Los Angeles County still in need of housing and services. We support No Place Like Home, but LA County is continuing to work on other initiatives that will help us to solve this both moral and humanitarian crisis in Los Angeles County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
Good morning, good afternoon. Kim Lewis with the California Coalition for Youth, and I just wanted to express our thanks to the administration and legislature for the inclusion in the definition of at risk of chronic homelessness, of calling out transition age youth who are homeless. or have significant barriers to homeless stability. We think this is very important because youth oftentimes get overlooked and are part of the invisible population of our homeless. Would also note for you around the questions on data, and we appreciate having a more expansive definition of working with HCD because a lot of times the point-in-time counts do not actually capture homeless youth accurately. It was only in 2013 that HUD actually required youth to be called out specifically in the count, and I know in some counties where we've had a challenge of a dropping significantly because a point-in-time count coordinator quit a month before the count happened, and so a lot of youth went uncounted in that county, and so that jeopardizes, and so we really appreciate having that flexibility in the definition of count, and we know we need to do more to count who these youth are, and we know that this is just really addressing the needs of youth who are homeless, who have mental health issues, and a lot of times they have challenges getting those SED diagnoses, so that's why the definition expansion is very helpful for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Andrew Langley on behalf of the County of Riverside. They have respectfully, they will issue a opposed unless amended position. They believe that their proposal will likely lead to a loss of MHSA funding, and they would ask that criteria be included to ensure that counties that have experienced reduction in their homeless population due to historical investments are not disadvantaged when competing against other jurisdictions with substantially larger homeless numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langley.
Nicole Wortelman on behalf of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors. We also have an opposed unless amended position for similar reasons to the County of Riverside. Firstly, we really appreciate all of the Senate's work on the issue, as well as the administration and our statewide associations. And we also appreciate many of the amendments that have been taken by the sponsors. San Bernardino County has reduced their homeless population since 2007 by 70%. So now, within this process, we're concerned that we'll be competing against counties that have a much higher homeless population, that have invested far less funding in homelessness programs and have spent less time working on those programs, and we're concerned about the loss of MHSA funding. We would like an amendment to prevent the competitive process from essentially ensuring that we will lose funding.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Hasselblad with the Steinberg Institute. Our mission is to put forward sound public policy and inspire leadership, and we are proud sponsors of AB 1618. Proposition 63 was written with the express intent to reach those living with the most serious mental illnesses and ensure their basic needs for survival are met, including housing. Too often, the hardest to reach and serve remain on the edges of our communities, while they also account for the highest cost in public services. The No Place Like Home proposal focuses critical resources at the local level specifically to target this population, ensuring counties are able to invest in what we know works. California has the largest homeless population, and No Place Like Home is one step in a march to address this massive issue that our state faces. Together with the Senate President Kevin De Leon and his staff, we took the time to engage with multiple stakeholders over a long period of time to develop this proposal. We thank CSAC, CBHDA, a number of other mental health providers and institutions in their participation in that stakeholder feedback, and for all their work on this landmark piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, if there are no further questions, we're coming to the end of this trailer bill conversation. Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but just a comment on the in response to some of the comments about the loss of MHSA funding. I mean, I'm looking at some pro formas here that I would certainly urge the administration to discuss with some of the stakeholders that indicate that, in fact, the percentage of total revenues is fairly low. Is that not correct?
Are you in reference to the amount of debt service that would also
debt service versus debt service
Correct.
Percentage of total revenues? I mean, I'm looking at one scenario, for example, where it's 0.8 0.8%.
Correct. So the program is designed so that ultimately when you fully bond it out, which will be down the road after we've completed all the various funding rounds, is the debt service will be somewhere between 120 to 130 million dollars ongoing, but that won't actually hit the MHS fund for a number of years. So when you look at what people are currently getting now, there should be very little impact. In fact, there is no impact in the upcoming budget year to any of these counties. It'll likely start having a drawdown on the fund in budget year +1, in which case when you look at the growth in the fund on the natural base funding should be, I can't guarantee it won't be impacted, but it should be fairly well protected.
Right. In other words, about $130 million is against a $2 billion to $3.7 or $3.8 billion total revenue stream.
Correct. It's around 6% of the entire.
At worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roth. No, those are real concerns, and of course we cannot know exactly what the future revenues for Prop 63 will be, especially if there is a downturn in the economy, and we do know that it impacts those who are paying into it significantly. But can you give us an idea of what the fund was receiving prior to the recession of 2008 and immediately afterward? Do we have any of those numbers? For example, what was it like in 6 and 7, and then what was it in 9 and 10?
Turning to my colleague to see if she has the numbers.
Mary Halterman, Department of Finance. We don't have those revenue numbers with us. We only have it going back to 13-14 right now, but if you want additional information.
You might have a lifeline here.
Like we have another one.
Teresa Calvert with Department of Finance. So looking back to 2008-9, it was about $1 billion, and today it's close to $1.8 billion. So are the intervening years.
And what did it fall to after the crisis of 08?
In 2009-10, it was at $734 million at one point, and again today around $1.8 billion.
Okay. And when the measure went to the voters, I was a part of the effort to pass Prop 63, but my memory tells me the expectation was about $1 billion a year.
Oh, I don't have that information available of what our estimate at the time was.
I think that was the hope and expectation at the time. So we've certainly grown way beyond that. And I understand that counties who are the beneficiaries of these funds begin to expect that which they are currently getting, not what they were initially proposed to get back in 2004. So, and that budgets are based upon current allocations, not what was earlier promised that might have been much less. So we all get very proprietary about these funds as they come our way. But again, there's every hope and expectation that is, and if you look at these numbers, somewhere between 16 and 26 million in 17-18, a range of maybe in the neighborhood of 50 million by 18-19 as it builds. It's going to take many years to build to the 120 to 130 and then stabilizing again for a couple of decades out. But certainly, even beyond whatever the next downturn will do to that 1.8 that we're currently receiving, without doubt it will grow beyond 2 billion and then beyond that in the outer years, but the impact will remain stable. So I think we can honestly say, even though we don't know exactly what the total revenues will be, given that the 130 will flatten for a couple of decades, that the percentage that 130 represents of the total Prop 63 will continue to shrink over time. So I think the impact will also continue to shrink over time. And of course, it's not as if the counties won't be getting a benefit out of this. They're going to have housing for the population they're serving that they don't have now. So I think that's pretty much the basic philosophy of what we're trying to do here, though not insensitive to the status quo. So we have a motion?
So moved.
As amended by Senator Roth. I want to make sure every question has been asked. Call the roll, please.
AB 1618, motion is to pass as amended. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
No.
Nielsen, no. Allen? Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Glazer? Hancock? Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Monning? Morlock? Wynn? Pan? Pan, aye. Pabley? Pabley, aye. Roth? Roth, aye. Stone? Wolk? Wolk, aye.
9-2. So the vote is 9-2. We will put that on call. Colleagues, since many of us are here, though not all, we'll start lifting the calls, starting with the 2 vote only, and then moving on to the 5 new trailer bills that we heard today. We will still keep the roll open. I'll ask the sergeants if you could contact those colleagues of ours who are already in other committee rooms to let them know that we'll go through a second round once they get here, but to allow you to get on with your days as we approach our session at 3 o'clock. We'll lift the calls now, starting with 1603. Please call the absent members.
1603, motion was to pass. Allen? Anderson? Anderson, aye. Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Monning? Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, aye. Pan? Pan, aye.
(15-3). So we're now at 15-3, again replacing the call. And colleagues, if you think you are complete in your voting, once we get through these calls, feel free to leave, but we're keeping the rolls open for those colleagues who are still absent. So moving on to 1609, please call the absent members. So the 1603 is 12-3, right. We don't have, yes, okay, 12-3, and we'll replace the call on that. So moving on to 1609, please call the absent members.
Allen? Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Monning? Morlock? Morlock, aye. Wynn? Wynn, aye. Pan? Pan, aye. Aye. (13-3).
So we're 13-3, again replacing the call. And then on the 5 bills that we heard today, starting with 1602, please call the absent members.
Allen? Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, aye. Wynn? Wynn, aye. Pan? Pan, aye.
We're at 14-1, and we'll replace the call. 1606, please call the absent members.
Nielsen? Allen? Anderson? Anderson, aye. Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Glazer? Glazer, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, aye. Pan? Pan, aye.
We are at 12-1.
Wolk, aye.
13-1, and we'll replace the call.
Senator Roth? Senator Roth? No.
13-1, right. AB 1608, General Government 1, please call the absent members.
Allen? Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Glazer? Glazer, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, no.
11-5, and we will replace the call. AB 1610, please call the absent members.
Allen? Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Glazer? Glazer, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, no. Pan? Pan, aye. Roth?
11-5?
13, yeah.
11-5, replacing the call. And then our last bill, 1618, No Place Like Home. Please call the absent members.
Allen. Glazer. Monning. Monning, aye. Morlock. Nguyen. Stone.
10-2, and we will replace the call. Colleagues, for those who have voted, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, we just got done with elections.
Okay.
So Senator Allen may be on his way down here. I just want to give you an update. I didn't dilly-dally. I came straight here.
I understand.
Give that man a gold star.
Thank you.
Where are 5 gold stars?
Allen. Allen. Monning. Monning, aye.
So we're at 13-3, and we'll replace the call. All right, well.
I don't have any. 1606, Nielsen. Nielsen, aye. Allen.
So that's 14-1, and we'll replace the call. Thank you, Senator Nielsen.